Chuck has it out for me already. All right, Shattered Expectations, the Chuck Norris story by Josh Stewart. In life, there are a lot of moments when one would think an event would work out in a certain fashion. Maybe it could be a long-awaited, vacation. I'm not going to touch it anymore. Or a chance to meet one's childhood hero. In my particular case, my story involves the latter. In spring of 2012, Chuck Norris jokes were all the rage. I'll share one of my favorites to give some context. Chuck Norris once fought Superman. The loser had to wear his underwear over his pants. Before all the jokes, though, Chuck Norris already was Superman. At least as far as 90s Texas was concerned. He was a world championship kickboxer who went on to become Walker, Texas Ranger. The coolest thing about Walker was that I don't ever remember him using a weapon. There would be a building full of bad guys with guns, and he would just jump off the rafters and beat the shit out of them before a round was even fired. Much cooler than Andy Griffith running around as Matlock with his gun out constantly, never to fire. Chuck Norris was one of the coolest dudes on TV for a 90s kid to grow up with. Anyway, one day, my friend Sky was like, dude, my friend at the paper got press passes to see a Chuck Norris documentary and meet him. Wanna go? My response was, fuck yeah, I wanna go. And it came to pass that we got those press passes to meet Chuck Norris at 10:30 a.m. at Showbiz Theater in Waxahachie, Texas. We began that morning with a jug of wine. Not a bottle. I'm saying one of those big-ass family jugs of blackberry table wine. The point is we were running late and pre-gaming is a necessity. So we killed the whole thing in about 20 minutes while rolling multiple blunts for our 10-minute drive. We hit the road with windows up and hotboxed all the way to the theater, where we continued to do so for the next 10 minutes. When we finally decided to go in, we were a few minutes late, but we were fine for all intents and purposes. The wine hit the instant my foot touched the ground. I was fucked up. Sky was fucked up. We was fucked up. That's when we noticed the cop cars. There were a shitload of cop cars, followed, when we entered the theater, by a shitload of cops. So many that I felt out of place for not being in uniform. We walked the narrow corridor in a slight panic because we knew we reeked of weed and booze. And again, it's 10:30 in the morning. Thankfully, the adrenaline rush from seeing all the police officers was enough to get us to our seats relatively soberish. Just before the lights dimmed, I noticed the crowd. It wasn't press in the crowd or critics like I had imagined. It was old people. Only old people. Sky and I had to be the youngest audience members by 30 years. That's not an exaggeration. The movie began. When Sky told me we were going to see a Chuck Norris documentary, I thought we were going to see a documentary about Chuck Norris. It wasn't. What it was a documentary made by Chuck Norris about Chuck Norris and his pastor going to Iraq to pray for the troops. If that's your bag, good for you. Troops are fine. God is fine. However, had I known that we were going to be watching a 2-hour documentary about it, my choices for that day would have been radically different. The plot of the documentary is as follows. Chuck goes to the military base. The Marines lose their shit because Chuck Norris was there. Chuck Norris and pastor pray for them. Repeat. Again, I don't have a problem with the subject matter. I had a problem because the process repeated like 6 or 7 times. Throughout the film, we became increasingly aware of one fact. Chuck Norris is absolutely not a badass. Maybe it's because we were drunk, but Sky and I were hard-pressed not to giggle our way through the film. It was a difficult task that won more than a few stink eyes from the fellow audience members. It was a serious documentary. However, the way he talked is what got us. He didn't at all sound like Walker. And yes, I'm aware Walker, Texas Ranger, is a fictional character, but at least for me, there was the implication that it was a fictionalized version of him. He didn't sound like Walker. He spoke like Ronald Reagan on Holiday. He would say phrases like, "Oh golly, golly gee," and "me oh my." Sky tried to count the "oh golly" phrases and "oh golly gee," but actually lost count. Now, he didn't lose count because he was fucked up. He lost count because Chuck Norris, childhood hero, used the phrase "oh golly" somewhere in the vicinity of 30 to 35 times. When the film was over, Chuck emerged from the shadows dressed in full karate garb. And I'm thinking, at least I get to see a roundhouse after all of this. Nope. Chuck just says, "Come out, kids. Let's show them what we got." And 10 little karate kids emerge. They start doing their exercises. And then although Chuck is suited up, he doesn't even do a single move. Then he reveals the real purpose of the film and tour was to raise money for his impoverished karate kids. Now, not that that's a bad thing, but it was another slice of misleading cake. After that was over, I put all my concentration on being sober for those final 5 minutes of standing in line and shaking his hand. "How are you today, son?" he said. I think I told him I was good, but all I could think about was how soft his hands were. Beyond that moment, I remember popping a bottle of champagne out the window while driving back. I think I drove. Then I remember Sky helping me drunkenly Mick Jagger my way into the house because my pants fell down and I tripped over them. And that's where the memory stops. To this day, I will remember that as the day my perceptions of Chuck Norris were shattered. My family remembers that day as the day I got drunk and missed my aunt's birthday.